Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session of our Spring 2023 series of Tuesday Times Roundtable, The Importance of Language Learning for a Global Perspective. My name is Michelle Zaldivar, your Senior Program Coordinator here at the Office of Global Learning Initiatives. TTR is our flagship discussion series that brings together multiple perspectives on current global issues and trends. You can learn more about TTR, watch past recordings, or come back and reference this one at go.fiu.edu/TTR. A reminder to please take a moment to sign in if you haven't already. This QR code is up here on the projector and posted around the room. And as we engage in today's session, we ask that everyone please use the mics. We'll have some roaming mics on the side. Shout out to our student volunteers that are helping out with those so that we can hear everyone's contributions in the recording. As always, Tuesday Times Roundtable is brought to you by a partnership with the Green Library and the New York Times. As an FIU community member with an @fiu.edu email address, you have a free digital subscription to the New York Times. You can access that at accessnyt.com. Our session today will be presented by a panel led by the Education Office of the Consulate of Spain, but we have two very special guests here with us today to provide some context and opening remarks to our panel and its engagement with FIU. Dr. Pablo Ortiz is the Vice President and Vice Provost of Regional and World Locations at FIU. With more than 25 years of experience in education, Dr. Ortiz is a leader in leveraging global opportunities at FIU, setting goals to address not only enrollment targets, but also financial efficiency, engagement, and research at each global location. Dr. Ortiz began his career as a teacher here in Miami-Dade County Public Schools and went on to serve as an elementary, K-8, middle, and high school level principal for 12 years. Dr. Ortiz has been honored at the school district's only two-time Principal of the Year in 2006 and again in 2012, and the 2012-2013 recipient of Principal Achievement Award for Outstanding Leadership as a top principal in the state of Florida. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Pablo Ortiz.
Thank you, Michelle, and good afternoon to everyone. This is great to see such a full house here at this very important session for the Tuesday Times Roundtable. Michelle, I have to tell you, you have the perfect voice to like host a podcast, doesn't she?
Yes.
I listen to podcasts all the time, and that's the kind of voice you need when you're in the car, so you ought to consider that. So welcome again. I mean, today's conversation is such an important conversation, and the importance of language in particular to help us understand and capture the essence of having a global perspective is one that I think that we all recognize is critical to the future of how countries and citizens around the world can collaborate. And really it is the essence of language that is the first step in really understanding what the other cultures and the history around the world represents. Michelle mentioned that part of my career I spent in the Miami-Dade County Public School System, but for me, what I'm most proud of during that time that I worked for the school system was that I was able, as a principal, to open 3 very distinct and unique language programs at those schools. I served as principal at Coral Way Bilingual K-8 Center. I know that the Consul is very familiar with that school. It is the first bilingual school in the United States. So students learn both in English and Spanish the entire day and become fluent in both languages. But what's rich about that curriculum and that is embedded with history, with culture, and with an appreciation of the sensitivities around the world that we have to be aware of. I then had a chance to open the first dual language middle school in Jorge Mascanosa Middle School, where we also then embedded that dual language experience. And then finally, as a principal of Edison Senior High School, we introduced the first dual language program with Haitian Creole, which was an important element for them. So language, for me, really serves as such an important component. But today, you're not here to listen to me. We have a fantastic panel that's going to talk to you a bit more about the importance of language, in particular for that global perspective. But it is really an honor for me to be here and introduce the Vice Consul of Spain, Sofia Ruiz del Arbol Moro. Just a little bit about her, and I know that we're probably the same. We don't always like to have people say our bios, but yours is quite impressive. So, born in Cádiz, in Spain, she currently serves as the Deputy Consul General, Consulate General General of Spain in Miami. She previously served as Deputy Consul General at the Consul General of Spain in Jerusalem, Deputy Director General, Security and Administrative Affairs in Spain, and worked in Spain, U.S., Jerusalem, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, and Nicaragua. So we have the pleasure of having a true world leader and world traveler that understands the importance of global collaboration, in particular when it comes to language. Other programs, she's a co-founder and board member of the Asociación de Mujeres Diplomáticas de España. See how I switch from English to Spanish? That's why it's important, right? And the co-author of Women in Diplomacy, Política Exterior. Her education, she earned a master's degree in International Relations, Diplomatic School of Madrid, Certificate of Political Studies, Institute of Political Science, University of Toulouse in France, and bachelor's degree in law, Universidad Complutense de Madrid in Madrid, Spain. So please join me in welcoming the Vice Consul of Spain, Sofia Ruiz del Arbol Moro.
Well, hello to everyone. Can you listen, right? I mean, you can hear me. Thank you, Vice President. Thank you, Pablo. You also have a very good voice for podcast. Not me. Well, as he has said, I am the Deputy Consul General of Spain in Miami. So, and because of that, and because of the subject of today is the importance of language learning in a connecting world, I will change to Spanish, if you don't mind. Mil gracias a la Universidad de Florida. Bienvenidos a todos. Espero que todos entendáis español. Supongo que sí, porque estáis interesados en hablar idiomas. Queridas ponentes, millones de gracias. Qué orgullo, qué privilegio teneros aquí. Jeannette, a la que conozco desde hace tiempo, también a la doctora Watson, Jessica y Beatriz, nuestra nueva lectora, bueno, no sé si nueva, lectora de español. Y muchas gracias a Lisa como representante de la oficina de la agregaduría, ¿no?, de educación del Consulado de España. A mí me ha correspondido hoy dar las palabras de bienvenida y la verdad es que no puedo estar más agradecida, no solamente por la importancia del tema que se va a tratar, sino además por estar con vosotros y poder oír vuestras aportaciones. No pretendo abusar de mi tiempo ni de mi posición como, dar la bienvenida, y tampoco quiero quitar tiempo a las aportaciones de las ponentes. Solo quería hacer un par de puntos, ¿no? Tocar un par de puntos que me parecen interesantes por mi experiencia personal y profesional y que creo que podrían contribuir al debate, ¿no? Estaba leyendo el otro día, me hacía gracia que hasta hace poco tiempo hablar idiomas, aprender idiomas era un privilegio de unos pocos y sobre todo reservado al mundo diplomático, ¿no? Yo he viajado mucho en la vida, tuve una abuela que nació en 1922, pero era muy fan de viajar por el mundo y de aprender idiomas y conocer otras culturas. También tuvo la suerte de poder hacerlo y gracias a ella he tenido la posibilidad de vivir en muchos sitios y leer, ¿no?, en diferentes idiomas, que me parece lo más enriquecedor. Sin embargo, te das cuenta que siempre decimos, ¿no?, a lo mejor Estados Unidos, que es un país de migración, aquellos personas hispanohablantes, en este caso, que llegan a una nueva nación, tienen la falsa idea de la integración, ¿no? Quieren que sus hijos se hagan muy americanos y por lo tanto van poco a poco olvidando la cultura, la lengua que dice tanto de uno mismo. Lo mismo pasa en España. España es una nación tan potente a nivel lingüístico, ¿no? Hay 20 naciones que hablan español como lengua materna o incluso más, ¿no? Hay como unas 20, sí. Que creemos que no es importante hablar otro idioma porque todo el mundo puede entendernos. Esto ha ido cambiando ahora poco a poco, gracias a Dios, y se va viendo, ¿no?, la importancia con programas internacionales de aprender el idioma, no solamente desde un punto de vista económico, que por supuesto lo tiene, pero sobre todo desde un punto de vista cultural. Yo antes de llegar a Miami, como ha dicho el vicepresidente Ortiz, estuve en Jerusalén y me dio una gran rabia no hablar hebreo o árabe porque te pierdes tanto de la cultura, tanto de la gente, los matices, bueno, te da un poco de pena. Hablar inglés, francés, alemán no es suficiente, tienes que entender a la gente local. Nada, y ahora finalmente, como spot publicitario, contaros que próximamente los Reyes de España van a estar inaugurando un Congreso Internacional de Lengua Española en Cádiz, justo en la ciudad donde nací, que se va a llamar precisamente Lengua Española, Mestizaje e Interculturalidad, también dando como ese peso que tiene a que no hay un solo español, sino que hay muchos españoles, ¿no? Y nada, antes de pasar la palabra a los ponentes, dar de nuevo las gracias a los organizadores de FIU y, como no, a Lisa y a la Agregaduría de Educación por vuestra generosa colaboración y apoyo constante para conseguir precisamente esto, la interculturalidad. Yo me voy a sentar aquí porque me tengo que ir dentro de poco y así os veo mejor. Vale. Y, por supuesto, opinaré. Muchísimas gracias a todos.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Imagine if someone told you that you could take one step that would enable you to travel more freely, to get paid more, to read some of the world's best literature, to perform better in school, to increase your focus, and enhance your understanding of other cultures. Such claims seem almost too good to be true, but the great news is that language learning is that one step that people can take that will lead to these and other benefits. Today we're going to talk about language learning and how significant this skill is both on a personal and professional level. The value of knowing languages generates a global, linguistic, and cultural competence appreciated in varied contexts. Studies have shown that learning a second language has a positive impact on communicative and interpersonal abilities, promoting unique problem-solving, flexibility, and critical thinking skills. The Education Office of the Embassy of Spain promotes diverse educational outreach programs in the United States and Canada with the goal of building long-lasting ties among the citizens of these countries and promoting the language and culture of Spain. Always in the hope of inspiring and empowering individuals to become global citizens through the passionate process of language learning, our flagship program, both in number and scope, is the North American Language and Culture Assistance Program, which we call NALCAP. American college students and graduates like you guys who are native-like speakers of English partner with schools in Spain to bolster language programs in our classrooms as language assistants. NALCAP, which falls under the category of public diplomacy programs, is a perfect example of global learning and language learning. Over 40,000 American citizens have participated in this program to date. And I'll tell you more about the program later on. Now I'm going to introduce our panelists for today. First, we have Ms. Jeannette Acevedo-Isenberg. She's the head of schools, downtown Doral charter schools at the Miami-Dade County Public School System. Her schools are also members of the International Studies program that works in collaboration with the Consulate of Miami. Then we have Dr. Maida Watson. Many of you may know her. She's a professor of Spanish and the graduate program director for the Department of Modern Languages here at FIU. We have Ms. Jessica Yevics. She's the director of IE Miami. Her affiliation is with the Instituto de Empresa University in Madrid, Spain. And then we have Beatriz Bullon. She's currently a language assistant, the opposite of NALCAP. She's here through a program funded by the Ministry of Education of Spain and the Department of Modern Languages of FIU. And I'm Lisa Arias. I'm an education advisor for the Education Office of the Consulate of Spain, and I'll be speaking to you later on. So I leave you with the round table now. Jeannette, whenever you're ready, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, and thank you to FIU for hosting this wonderful roundtable today, which has such an important topic. So as she mentioned when she introduced me, I am the head of schools of downtown Doral Charter Schools in the Doral area, which is actually not very far from this university. We host a dual language, bilingual, bicultural program that basically prepares our students with the mission of them being global leaders, not just being global citizens, but actually being able to go out into the community, out into the world as global leaders. And in order to be global leaders, the acquisition of a foreign language is absolutely critical. And not just the foreign language component, but also the cultural component. Learning how to appreciate other cultures, customs, traditions, and embracing that as well actually prepares you better for life, which is what we do at our schools. So I'll give you a little quick, brief summary of what our program does and the benefits of it. So basically, we host a program where students either choose one of 3 tracks, which is Spanish, Portuguese, or French, our largest program being the Spanish program. And our students are receiving approximately about 2.5 hours a day of foreign language. Within that block of time, they're receiving the foreign language, the grammar, the reading, and the writing portion of it. And then the other hour is what we call content or contenido, where they're learning science, social studies, and math in the foreign language as well. As the students continue to move on to the next grade levels, and then they move into our middle high school, because our program does start in kindergarten and goes all the way up to 12th grade. In the middle and the high school, the students are basically receiving 2 periods out of 8 with the foreign language component, where they're studying the foreign language component, and their studies continue progressively, and they're also taking humanities in the foreign language as well. So this gets them to the part where they are fully bilingual by the time they get to 12th grade. Because of the fact that they're not just studying the grammar and the reading and the writing, but they're also learning all the other subjects as well in that foreign language, that is what really truly makes them what we call fully bilingual, completely bicultural. During that time, they're also enjoying the studying of the cultures of all the Spanish-speaking countries, as well as Portuguese and French. And so when a student goes through our entire program, once they receive that point where they get to 12th grade graduation, which actually this year is our first year that we will have a senior class graduating, those students graduate with that international studies diploma certificate, as well as a seal of biliteracy. In our middle school and high school, we also host the International Baccalaureate program, which is actually a perfect fit with our foreign language component. So those students also are able to graduate with the IB diploma, which obviously opens up many doors throughout their life. Research shows that students that are bilingual definitely outperform their peers in many different aspects, in reading, in test scores. Students tend to be happier. Students tend to come to school more often. The attendance is better. Parental involvement is also something that is definitely shown by research that does a lot better. And that's because of the component of them having that extra language as they continue to progress and grow through the years. So there's a lot of benefits to them having that additional language. There is a famous quote that states that when you have one language, you're in a quarter of life, but as you have an additional language, 1, 2, or 3, that's going to open many doors along that corridor throughout the way. And we truly believe that our students have many more employment opportunities because of the fact that they are fully bilingual. And it's not just about being able to speak another language fluently, because especially in Miami, we have a very international population, and there are many people that can do that. But when you finish in a program that is a true rigorous, excellent in academics program that is a dual language program, those students are at a different caliber, at a different level, where they can truly go out into the workforce and truly put on a resume that they are bilingual and that they will be able to contribute to that company or the workforce or whatever it is that they're doing in the world, because they have the education level of a true bilingual student. There's a lot of also medical research that also shows that bilingual human beings tend to truly, their brain works in a different way, and it truly helps them with diseases such as even dementia. that tends, if that is something that's going to come upon the human being, usually it tends to come into life later to those bilingual individuals. We also find that our students, because of the fact that they are receiving instruction in 2 languages, if they do come into our school and they are ESOL students, English as second language, their knowledge level continues to increase because of the fact that they continue to receive instruction in their home language. So that learning gap that occurs a lot of times in schools that only teach 1 language does not occur at downtown Doral, because our students continue to receive instruction in their home language, and they tend to do a lot better academically because they're learning the different concepts and skills from 2 different teachers, from their foreign language teacher as well as from their English language teacher. So if there's a concept or a skill that maybe they didn't understand in their English class or in their Spanish or French or Portuguese class, it may be that they have that aha moment in their other language. And so the teachers tend to work together to make sure that students are being successful and acquiring all the skills that they need in order to achieve the mission of the school, which in the end is for them to be global leaders.
Oh, thank you so much. Dr. Watson?
Hello? Hi. Yeah, I think Jeannette stole part of my talk.
Oh, dear.
Because right before we started, we were talking about bilingualism. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about was how the brain is different in bilingual children or bilingual people than in monolingual. And there are all these incredibly complicated studies, about where this is stored in the brain and what happens if you get dementia, which language is going to survive, whatever. So if it's the first language or the one you acquire later on in life. But I like to talk about the fact that bilingualism is sometimes resented and even disliked in some groups. People will tell you, if you have bilingual children, they'll tell you, well, you should basically just concentrate on the English because that's the dominant language and they're going to get behind in their English language skills. And that is not true. That is not true. What bilingualism does for you is it gives you a chance to see other perspectives. I've been bilingual since I was 3 years old. And my husband said, well, you started talking at 9 months, but you never shut up. So that's one of the disadvantages of bilingualism. So yes, you talk a lot. And when I was 3, I learned English. I'm half American, half Panamanian, and I learned English from my Southern grandmother. So I spoke with a Southern accent. I say, hi, how are you? So since we were in Panama, where I grew up, they would take me around to talk to people to find out, hey, talk, and that accent I lost. Afterwards, when I went to the schools that were in English, I would lose it. And in the afternoons, I would go to the schools in Spanish, which is a horrible way of bringing up your child. Don't do that, okay? Mm-hmm. But yeah, and so this is what happens when you are really bilingual. You always see 2 aspects to it, which causes me problems in my job sometimes, because I don't accept one definition, I accept several, and somebody says, well, we have to do it this way. I said, well, why? Why don't we go out of the box? Why don't we do it that way? Why don't we the other? And thereby I'm in trouble. So that is a disadvantage of bilingualism, the fact that you see all these different aspects. Now, all these studies have shown that you are actually, your brain is better. You do better because of the flexibility and the fact that you're learning in 2 languages. Your vocabulary can be just as good in both languages. You can switch from one to the other. And I recommend that you take a 3rd language. Because particularly if you're in Miami at FIU, and now I'm going to put a plug in for the modern language department, we've got great French teachers, we've got great Portuguese teachers, and the classes are very small. And that's because a lot of people have not realized the financial and economic advantage of speaking 2 or 3 languages, particularly here in Miami. I also work with the College of Business, the Center for International Business Research, and they have a whole program of languages for business. We do Spanish for business, Portuguese for business, Korean for business. So you have at your hands, at your desk, you have a lot of different languages that would cost you a fortune if you took them elsewhere. We're also one of the universities in the United States with most upward mobility. That means we have a lot of people who started out poor, who, after they get out of FIU, without a lot of debts, by the way, go to, and they get better and better jobs. So please take a third language. Please make sure your kids are bilingual, or make sure you're bilingual. Keep on studying the second language, because it's not going to take away from the first language. I have a colleague who says, well, it's impossible to be bilingual. She says, you're always going to have one language that's stronger. I said, you might, but since she's not bilingual, I don't think she is. So anyway, and she didn't go through this experience of being 3 years old and speaking the two languages. So I think that she's wrong. And I think that, you can't really you really don't, that's not true. You can work at it, you can have the language, you can have the language skills, and that third language will come in very useful. Business-wise, this is Miami. We are an international business center. People call us all the time and they say, we want to hire someone to go to all over in our bank, but we don't want them to speak lousy Spanish. What that they mean is that they want them to speak Spanish, correct Spanish everywhere. And we are offering it in the schools. We have heritage language programs. We have all kinds of classes like that. And oh my God, somebody's calling me, some Chinese guy. So anyway, yeah, and he's not a Republican. Anyway, I'm going to ignore that. And so, so they want you to speak standard Spanish. They want you to speak these other languages too. They want you to speak Portuguese. They want you to speak French. You have it here at your fingertips, and it's cheap. Try paying University of Miami tuition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. I just want to add on a really short thing. In Spain, Beatriz and I were talking about this before. When kids go to school, I live this through my kids, they're dealing with 4 different languages every single day, because obviously Spanish is their language arts, right? Then if they live in a different part of Spain that has an official language, like Beatriz and I, we come from Galicia, and so that has their own language, which is Gallego, so they study that also. They start learning English at the age of 3, and then further on, like in 5th or 6th grade, they start with French. So you can see the difference there. Learning languages is an immense treasure. It really, really is. Okay, Jessica.
So now I know I can attribute my long-windedness to being bilingual. So thank you. Thank you for that, Dr. Watson. So my name is Jessica. I am the director of IE University's Miami Center. I don't know, has anybody heard of IE University before? Some of you guys, okay. Well, one of our main pillars is actually diversity, and so I'll get into that in just a little bit, but this subject is very near and dear to my heart. I was not raised bilingual. I actually grew up, was born and raised in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Office fans anywhere? I sometimes get some smirks.
Oh,
and
right.
Yeah.
That's
so it is, I think it's a little more exciting than it's portrayed on the show, but it is not very international. And so my first exposure to languages came in middle school, the typical thing where you have to take French, Spanish, German, but it was really in high school when I had a native, actually from Spain, a Spanish teacher who was from Spain, that it really clicked, like the actual application of it, right? And like learning about the culture and all of that. So then I went to college. I didn't know what I wanted to major. I'm sure you guys a lot of you can relate with that, but I knew I wanted to have that international component, right? I wanted languages to be a part of that. So I ended up at Loyola University in Baltimore. They have about 75% of their student body goes abroad. And so that was just my main driver. Fast forward, I spent my entire junior year in Spain. I studied in a university town outside of Madrid called Alcalá de Henares. And there it was not only that I feel like I found the best version of myself, but I really realized how much I enjoyed learning a foreign language, but also connecting with individuals on a level that I would not have been able to if it weren't for those language skills. And as Doña Sofia was saying before, also really understanding the culture. I got to know the culture and the country that I now refer to as my second home. I always say I'm Spanish at heart. So that was the beginning of my journey there. And then while I was after I graduated, I rushed back to Spain. I did a master's in international relations, and it was actually in Spanish, but it was extremely diverse. So out of 25 students, we were from 21 different nationalities. But the classes were taught, the majority of them were taught in Spanish. At that same time, I was actually part of the North American Language and Culture Assistance Program, so NALCAP, back in the day. And there I was exposed to what Lisa was mentioning, where from such a young age, I mean, I sat in on classes that were students in kindergarten. They were being exposed to languages in a way that I never had. And so it kind of changed my perspective, seeing it, you know, just in as part of the curriculum so young. And again, it wasn't until I became a little bit older and on my own kind of account, I started exploring languages. After a couple years of teaching English, I got my first job opportunity with IE University. I was working in Madrid. And it's true that Spanish wasn't a requirement for the role. I mean, my role was actually supporting students coming from the Middle East and Africa, so the majority of the work I was doing was in English. But it's true that through those language skills and through my ability to adapt and get to know my colleagues and get to know higher-ups, I am 100% sure that that's why I am where I am today. You know, I was able to have those conversations, and so something very important there. Another thing I wanted to touch on at IE, again, as I mentioned, diversity is one of our core pillars. The majority of our programs on a graduate and undergraduate level are actually in English. However, you're in a class with, our student body represents over 150 nationalities. The average graduate program has about 80% international students in the classroom. So you're really interacting with students who come from different backgrounds. We talk a lot about intercultural skills. Have you guys heard of interpersonal skills? I know Lisa mentioned it before as well. Does anyone know what, can you give me an example real quick of what one interpersonal skill could be? We're doing it right now. I'm doing it right now. Communication, right? So communication is an interpersonal skill. Empathy is an interpersonal skill. Active listening is an interpersonal skill. Problem solving, creativity, those are all interpersonal skills. So now come with me, we're gonna travel in our brains to Madrid. We're in a classroom. We're with 5-6 individuals from other backgrounds. They're from diverse nationalities. They come from, you know, different socioeconomic classes, and they all speak different languages. You're trying to solve a problem, you know, you have to put together a presentation. There's no way you're going to know, or it's very improbable that you know all of those languages fluently, right? But just by understanding one and having learned another language, your ability to problem solve, to empathize with the other people in that group, it just increases exponentially, right? And so that could be in a work environment as well. Companies nowadays are always looking for people who can negotiate, who can convince other people, who can get everyone on board towards a common goal, who can motivate. They're looking for leaders. They're looking for problem solvers. And these are some things that intercultural skills and things like language learning are actually helping you do. When we talk about problem solving, there was an article published, it was a report by the World Economic Forum, in which there's 10 top skills that they require, or they think are going to be the most needed skills in 2025. 5 of them are related to problem solving. And so when you think about a linguist, you don't automatically say like, oh, they're great problem solvers, right? But when I think about my experience and trying to communicate with little vocabulary or create grammatical structures or how to understand different people I'm speaking to, that's essentially problem solving. I think about my 3-year-old daughter, who's being raised bilingual and constantly has to just assess the situation, who she's talking to, what words they're using, where am I? You know, are they related to mom? Are they related to dad? And then decide which language she's going to use. Just to use the different tools that she has, which is essential for problem solving, right? And so that's something that you would be able to take with you, much more than just being able to speak the language. I mean, it gives you skills that are even more transferable, and it supports your interpersonal skills as well. So just to summarize, if I could say 3 things, I think one would be you never know, what kind of doors learning a second or third or fourth language could open to you, and I'm an example of that. The second would be the idea that it's not only the opportunity to speak with other people and maybe not necessarily work in a certain country or within a certain region. It's those skills, those intercultural skills that you're gaining through language learning. And the third would just be that interconnection between intercultural skills and interpersonal skills. So things like listening, empathy, communication, all of those things that are really hot skills right now. I mean, only 2 of those 10 skills I mentioned from the World Economic Forum are related to actual hard tech skills. They really need people who can have these interpersonal skills. And then I would just close by saying I could 100% say if it were not for my language skills, my interest in learning another language, I would have not met and married my husband, I would not have my my children. I would not be here in Miami. I would not have this job, and I wouldn't have made so many amazing connections. And so just want to leave you guys with that as a little bit more of a personal story as well.
Thank you, Jessica. Beatriz?
Hi, my name is Beatriz. As already Lisa introduced me, I am from Spain. I am the Spanish teaching assistant that normally comes every year here to FIU. Every year is a different person. This year it's me. I'm going to leave soon, sadly, but that's life. But Lisa already described my education. I am from Spain. I am from Galicia. Have you ever heard about Galicia? Yes, that's good news, because normally it's not that popular. But Galicia is in the northwest of Spain, and we also have another official language. Of course, we speak Spanish, but we also speak Galician, we speak Gallego, as other regions in Spain has, like Catalan in Catalonia or Basque in the Basque Country. So I speak Galician. So since I was a small kid, my brain, maybe, I don't know if my brain is different or not, I have no idea about that, but I was taught in two languages. I was taught in Spanish and also Galician. My family was not originally from Galicia, but I grew up there. So I learned Galician at school. I learned both Spanish and Galician, of course in the school, but also in the streets, and listening to people speaking Galician. My family was not able to speak Galician, but I was able as a little kid to speak it. So for me to learn both languages as my native languages when I was a kid was something beautiful. And of course, Lisa already said, but we also speak and we also learn native another foreign languages when we are kids. And I started learning English when I was 3 years old, and I fell in love with languages. And that's where my love story with languages started, learning English. So I learned English during high school, and I also started to learn in French. So at the time, it was 4 languages for us, for me, not for everybody. You don't need to, English it's compulsory, but you don't need to study French or German nowadays, but you don't need to, but if you want, of course, you can do it. And you are somehow used to speak more than one language there. And I found my passion in life, that was languages, so of course, I did my bachelor in modern languages because it was everything I could do. It was to speak languages, that was my passion. So I continued studying French, English, and I studied other languages, it was Portuguese. And being able to speak more than one language it's a blessing. For me, it's a blessing. And I continued studying there, and being able to speak French allowed me to study abroad in Canada. I was studying in Montreal. So I've been in a lot of places where 2 languages were spoken, because I'm from Pontevedra. Pontevedra is a city in Spain where Galician and Spain live together. I was in Montreal. In Montreal, they speak French, they speak English, so another city with 2 languages. And now I'm here in Miami. You have Spanish, you have English. So I don't know if it's me following these cities or these cities are following me. But I'm always in a city where 2 languages are spoken. I don't know why. But anyway, speaking languages allowed me to travel the world. Being young and now being able to speak English allowed me to apply for this program that the Spanish government, the Ministry of Education has with FIU. And I was selected to be here. So if I wasn't able to speak English, that was a requirement. So it was impossible to me to be here. So being able to speak languages is always going to open a door for you. It's always to be something positive. Maybe the only negative thing is what Maida was saying about not being able to stop talking, but it's probably the bad thing, the only bad thing about languages. It's always going to be good. It's always going to give you opportunities. It's going to allow you to meet new people, new cultures, and learning. Languages are not just about words. It's just about meeting people and, I don't know, learning about new cultures, new ways of seeing life. So if I could have the possibility for you, I have the possibility to be here. So if you have the possibility in your life ever to be abroad and to study a new language and to work and meet a lot of people from different world, you should do it, because it's always going to show you something positive. There's nothing bad about it. It's always going to be learning. You are learning the language and you are learning yourself, because you are learning about yourself, you're learning about other people, and if you stay with your native language, okay, you are going to be talking with people that also shares your native language, but the world is big for something. It has a meaning to be so different, and so there are many people with so many different varieties, so many different ways of seeing the world. So you should take advantage of any opportunity you can have to be aboard and to speak as many languages as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beatriz. So on the flip side, Beatriz explained that she's here sponsored by the Ministry of Education and the Department of Modern Languages at FIU. And on the flip side, we have this NALCAP program, which I'd like to talk to you a little bit about today. As I mentioned before, NALCAP is a public diplomacy program where American students, college students, and graduates go over to Spain to be language assistants. Let me take a little quick look at this. Participants in the program, what they do there is they assist the lead teachers in the classroom, the teaching of the English language and culture that we've talked about so much today, not only the language but the culture. And this promotes, obviously, because they're in Spain, a cultural link that is tremendously influential for all the people who participate in the program. The skills that you acquire through this experience are going to leave an incredibly deep international impact on the returning language assistant, as it had on many of the panelists that they spoke here today. And this can be put to use, whether it be in the field of teaching, of business, and other fields. But the personal and professional development that you get from participating in this program is just incredible. People who come back over to Spain to participate in the program, come back a different person. I can guarantee that. So what exactly will people be doing when they participate? Well, they're going to be a teacher's assistant, always under the supervision and guidance of a lead teacher in the English as a foreign language classroom in Spain. Another possibility, we have some schools that have bilingual programs. They use a content-based methodology. What they do there is they teach a core subject, maybe it be math or science or social studies, in the other language, which in this case would be English. So the TA there is going to support the teacher, especially with listening and speaking skills in these kind of schools. So your main tasks will be conducting conversation lessons, right? The focus is going to be on listening and speaking. You're going to be in the classroom, and the students are going to be able to hear how you use the vocabulary and the grammar. They're going to hear your pronunciation. They're going to hear your intonation. And that's something incredibly invaluable in the advancement of learning a language, to have a native speaker there, right there in the classroom with you. You'll also be presenting cultural presentations. For example, in November, when Thanksgiving comes around, it's very typical for the teacher to ask the language assistant, can you prepare something about Thanksgiving? Because Thanksgiving is only celebrated in the US and in Canada. So that you're sharing your culture at the same time that you're sharing your language. And then you can be involved in other type of extracurricular activities that can be varied. Where can you be placed? You can be placed in an elementary school. And as we mentioned before, this can include early childhood programs because children start learning English at the age of 3 in Spain. Okay, you could be placed in a secondary school. Secondary schools in Spain is a mix of middle school and high school. In Spain, and mostly in Europe, there's not a separation of these schools the way they are in the United States. And You can also be placed in language schools. We have a network of language schools in Spain that only teach languages. Here the students tend to be a little bit older. They can be older teenagers or adults, and this is another option also in which to participate. What are the program requirements? Well, you have to be a U.S. citizen and have a valid U.S. passport. You have to have a degree, a BA, a BS, an AA or AS, or you can also be a sophomore, a junior, or a senior in a BA or a BS program. You have to be a native speaker of English, you have to be in good physical and mental health, and have a clean background check. This is for your visa, because to go over and do this program, you have to apply for a visa. So these are requirements of the visa. Be aged 18 to 60, and even though it's not a requirement, we really recommend that you have a basic level of Spanish for your personal use in every day to go out and buy groceries or any other type of shopping that you might need to do. Your schedule, you're there 14 to 16 class periods a week, and they always try to give you a 3-day weekend. You'll receive a stipend from the government of about 800 to 1,000 euros, depending on the region of Spain that you're assigned. Now, many people ask and they say 800 to 1,000 euros a month. That's like 800 to 1,000 euros a dollar. Will we be able to live? Will we be able to buy food? The truth is that yes, Spain has a much lower cost of living than the United States. Maybe not in the bigger cities like Madrid and Barcelona, but in the smaller towns, the stipend will be enough to pay for housing and to eat, so you won't go hungry. Also, you can supplement this grant with private tutoring. It's been really funny, Jessica, I don't know if you did private tutoring when you were there. Okay, well, it was illegal when Jessica did it. And I think all these 40,000 that have gone through the program, they were doing this illegally. Now it's not illegal anymore, starting from this summer. So yeah, good to know now. The length of the program is 8 months. You go from October to May in the majority of Spain, and you go 1 more month in Madrid. You get medical insurance with the program, not meds, but meds are incredibly affordable in Spain. I was there in the summer, in Christmas, and I bought a whole huge box of ibuprofen, and it was 50 cents, just so that you get an idea about it. So they're very affordable. You get an orientation course at the beginning of the school year, an official certificate at the end of the program. You get paid school vacations, a really long Christmas and Easter break, and you have an option to renew an extra year if you get a positive evaluation from the school. You could actually stay for 5 years in the program. You do have to find housing on your own, and you have to choose 3 regions of Spain, which are your preferred regions. This doesn't mean that we guarantee a placement in these regions, but every effort is made to accommodate your choices, because if you're happy, then we're happy. So you need to do a little research if you're interested in participating in the program. Why Spain? Oh my goodness, there's so many reasons. We have tons of festivals. I'm sure you're very familiar with the running of the bulls in Pamplona. Maybe somebody would like to do that. Or the Tomatina Festival, where people throw tomatoes at each other. And apparently it's lots of fun. There are the fallas that were just held this weekend in Valencia. We have beautiful ancient ruins like the aqueduct in Segovia, this mosque in Córdoba, this palace in Madrid, the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, that we have a Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao in the north of Spain, beautiful beaches. Now the beaches are a hard sell here in Miami, but we have beautiful beaches. And if someone's interested in skiing, we have tons of ski resorts, wonderful cultural events, and the food. Again, in Miami, you're very, very familiar with the food, but oh my goodness, the tapas, the paella, and my personal favorite, which is chocolate con churros. Yeah? So apps are currently open for this cycle. They close on April 4th. There are no application fees. It's free in case you're interested in applying. You know, many people are using this as a gap year experience. After graduating from school, a lot of people aren't really sure what they want to do. They're not really 100% sure if they want to go into the workforce, if they want to do a master's. So this is always a really interesting option that gives you time to think a little bit. And at the same time, you're learning a language, you're learning about a new culture, and you're also receiving a stipend, right, for this. So I'm going to share a video that an intern did for us. It's sort of like a year in the life of being a NALCAPper in Spain, and I'd like to share it with you. Okay, and so if you're interested, we have a website. It's called NALCAP Spain. We're on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we also have a podcast on Spotify. Thank you so much for coming today and learning about language learning. I don't know if anyone has any questions that you'd like to ask any of the panelists.
Hi. I was just going to ask, for NALCAP, can you choose what kind of school you're placed into?
You do. They do ask you. They do ask you. Again, it's such a big program that sometimes it's really hard to guarantee all the placements, but they do ask you on the application. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question for one of our panelists as we wait for the next Q&A from the audience, especially to those of you that are working directly in schools from the K-12 level all the way to the university. Would you say that being in such a multicultural community enhances that even more? So like when students themselves, right, so you said, Beatriz, you grew up also in a bilingual like neighborhood and area. So you're doing it in school and then you're going out into the community and doing that as well. Does that enhance it? Is there a drawback to that somewhere at some point? Are there pros and cons of language learning, especially in the early ages of that learning, especially for older students? Is there any pro and con or discussion there?
I don't think there's anything counter in that, okay? I think it's a very good experience, and I still keep on pushing for starting very early. The younger you start, the better your accent.
If I could add to that, I think because when you're exposed to different diverse experiences, and that could be through language, you're definitely more open to having more of those experiences. And so in the case of IE, for example, we look at different admissions applications, we talk to candidates, and we do have students who come who've never studied abroad, who've never lived abroad, but we even ask on our application, how many languages do you speak? How many countries have you lived in outside of your own for longer than 3 months? And the reason is because they tend to do very well in our classroom. And, it's like international students tend to be drawn to international students. Once you have that diversity, it's almost like with Spain, I always say you drank the Kool-Aid. Whenever somebody says like, oh, I came back and I loved it, we all get it. We're all really passionate about it. So once you have that exposure, you're definitely prone to continue, searching for those kind of opportunities.
And if I can add, what happens to our students at our school at downtown Doral, because we live in such an international community, Miami is definitely full of, it's an international population, they're able to go out into the community and actually practice what they're learning on a daily basis. So it doesn't just become contained to the school environment and the 4 walls of the school, which for us, that continues to enhance the experience and prepare them even better for life in a diverse society, community world.
Right, they're surrounded by native-speaking people, so that exposure is excellent, yeah. And employers, again, about language learning, they're looking for people, like Jessica said, who can think outside of the box. And when you learn a language, it gives you those skills to think outside of the box, no doubt about it.
There's also a level of confidence that is acquired when students start to learn a second, a third, a fourth language, and so it also affects their self-esteem. So there's a component there of healthy mental health, if we want to call it, because of the fact that students feel very confident that they can travel, that they can go to different parts of the world, they can communicate, they can appreciate, and that definitely also helps and accentuates the success of their future.
Next question's right here.
Hi. Hello? Okay.
Hi.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking with us today. I think given the fact that specifically the school system in America is very individualistic, as we've seen, in terms of, pushing forward this, monolingual, then the whole dual lingual, bilingual program is kind of a new approach. Given that most of us kind of grew up in that sort of sense, and that kind of attributes to this sense of like kind of culture shock as we maneuver in life. I'm bilingual and all that, but at a general sense, I've also noticed that that's kind of the approach for many people. And I've also seen like that there's an approach to adapt to English as a language. How can we, as individuals on a day-to-day basis, how can we expose ourselves to this, not just, the aspect of different languages, but also the aspect of different cultures on a day-to-day basis?
So one piece of advice I would have, I think it's a very great point, and you're right, and I didn't grow up speaking 2 languages. As I mentioned, that came later on. I think if you're looking to interact with people from different cultures, I think there's a couple things. One thing, and you could do that here, especially in cities where you have a very multicultural community, but volunteer. And so whether that be volunteering, teaching English or teaching Spanish or things like that, they give you the opportunity to get in front of different individuals. And so when I came back from Spain after my junior year abroad, I was like missing that. You know what I mean? And like it was great to see my friends again, but it felt like I had completely changed and no one else had. And so, other people had, right? I know the world doesn't revolve around me, but you get where I'm going. I was missing that piece. And I actually started working with it was at the time, the Baltimore Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and through them I was giving English classes. I was meeting with diverse individuals, and it was kind of not necessarily filling that void, but giving me that exposure. And that was when I began to learn about other cultures outside of Spain in terms of Spanish speakers. And so my suggestion would be to look for opportunities for volunteering or community building that you could do, where you can use some of the skills that you have as a bilingual individual to help others who maybe don't have that, and also to gain some of that exposure that you might be looking for.
May I answer that question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Again, I plug our department, but we have a French program right now which has an intermediate class with 4 students in it. meeting on the second floor here. And the program, the French program, has a fantastic instructor named Maria Antonieta Garcia, who goes and takes the students everywhere all the time, and who actually does this sort of thing. So you can just sign up for that class or whatever, and get that and also get college credits for it. So you don't have to, I mean, it's great that you volunteer, but we actually have built that into some of our classes. And our Portuguese class is also very much that way. The teacher is Brazilian, and she's very active, and so you can look for this. You don't actually have to take the old boring classes where they were sitting there, reading grammar to you, because they don't exist anymore.
Thank you so much. So it's 1:32. I absolutely understand if some students have us scheduled in between your classes, and if that is the case, you're more than welcome to very quietly grab your bags and go. But TTR hangs out after the end of the session every time. So if you want to hang out and ask just a few more questions, if our panelists are willing to stay a little extra time. I know if you have something scheduled between two, I totally understand. Because it looks like we've got 2 more questions in queue right now. Thank you so much for those of you that need to be on your way, but next question.
Hello?
Oh,
yes. So my question is basically, we hear usually that once you get older, it's harder to learn another language. What would you recommend if someone was in school right now would want to learn another language? I know you mentioned there's a department program in FIU, but what about outside of school, or if someone works a job, what's the best way to learn another language like Spanish, for example?
Well, I had somebody one time in my Spanish class, we named her Pollo Tropical because she had learned all her Spanish at Pollo Tropical. And this was an intermediate Spanish class, and then I had another student who learned all his Spanish in the bars in Spain. So he could ask certain things.
There you go.
He could ask for drinks, and he could talk about tapas, but he couldn't do anything much else. So these are 2 perfect examples of picking it up. I mean, Pollo Tropical actually had a job in Pollo Tropical, which is why she learned all that Spanish. So you have quite an opportunity here. You could volunteer to one of the senior citizens. They're all over the city is full of senior citizens places where people are dancing around and flirting with each other. And I'm sure they would love to have you come talk to them.
We also, if I can add, at our school, our elementary school, we have college students that actually come and volunteer and work with our students in our school. And a lot of them do that because they go into these elementary Spanish or Portuguese or French classes, and believe it or not, while they're assisting, they're learning as well at an early level versus helping in a high school class that the level may be way too advanced. So that's always an option as well.
And our last official question for the day. Turn it on.
Hello?
No.
Okay.
How can we get more information about the French classes?
Call Modern Languages, 348-2851. And ask for Maria Antonieta Garcia.
Department of Modern Languages at FIU is absolutely phenomenally placed and in everywhere, and you see them and don't see them all at the same time because they inform so many of the cultural programming that we've got on campus. So one last time, with a big round of applause, thank you so much to our panelists.
Thank you.
Join us again next week. We'll have another panel for a wide view of health equity, social determinants of health, led by the Assistant Dean of the Medical School that will be in our very room. That is our last in-person TTR for the semester. The last 2 of the semester will be online. So highly encourage you to come in person, meet the panelists, and ask your questions. Otherwise, we've got the application open for the Global Learning Student Fellowship. If you're interested in that fellowship is a funded fellowship that can be used for travel programs, if that's something that you are interested in doing. Application is open now, and the deadline is April 21st. And tomorrow is our last GL at FIU session. If you're interested in coming to ask questions about GL programming, like the Medallion, Peace Corps Prep, or the Millennium Fellowship, or the GL Fellowship, you're more than welcome to do that. go.fiu.edu/GL info. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you so much.
So we don't have